So hello and welcome. This is Truth You Can Wake Up To. My name is Samuel William and it is Friday the 9th of December 2011. So what is being widely reported out there on the news media is that the European talks to try and save the euro have commenced, and the breaking news is that David Cameron has come out and said that he doesn't want to join it. He wants to act in British interest, and he's vetoed Britain's involvement in the accord. Now, doesn't he look strong to everyone? All of those Eurosceptics, all of those people who were worried that Britain was going to be swamped by the European Union, now all cheering and saying that David Cameron is our hero, a very, very strong leader, almost like Winston Churchill defending this country from the ravages of a European dictatorship. Well, sadly, no, ladies and gentlemen. I have one little quote here that David Cameron said. He said, negotiations about giving up sovereignty will happen outside the summit for Britain. So he's not particularly worried about sovereignty. He just doesn't want to commit himself at this particular time. Also, another quote was that the debate about sovereignty was for the City of London. So it turns out David Cameron's not really particularly concerned about Britain as a whole, but he's worried about the sovereignty and decision making that the City of London have. Well, there we have it, don't we? For those of you that listened to my broadcast yesterday, we were talking about how the City of London is a sovereign city-state. It is not part of England, nor is it part of the United Kingdom. It's its own country. Because it's its own country, they have their own laws, their own leaders. David Cameron is not their leader. Nobody in the City of London voted for him. He's not supposed to represent their views. They have their own leaders to do that. He's supposed to represent the views of the British people. So what exactly is he doing parading around in Brussels, arguing for the sovereign status of a different country? So they're calling this a EU financial crisis accord. Now that's sort of telling us a lot straight off the bat, isn't it? The European Union Financial Crisis Accord. What they're agreeing to have a financial crisis, essentially. They've announced at this summit that the European bailout is going to happen in July 2012. And how much is the bailout going to be? They said they need at least 2 to 3 trillion euros in order to save it. So essentially the credit rating agencies and the IMF are saying, we want 2 to 3 trillion euros, and you can be sure it's going to be closer to 3. We want 3 trillion euros, otherwise you're going to have a financial collapse. And if that's not blackmail, I don't know what is. One of David Cameron's best friends, Boris Johnson, of course, he's the Mayor of London, was quoted as saying that Cameron has played a blinder. So I was doing a bit of research earlier on. I was watching BBC News 24. I always find it handy, because whatever they're promoting, you can be sure there's a hidden message there. There's a subliminal subtext to what they're trying to communicate to you. One of their headlines was that Boris Johnson, the Mayor of Greater London, who's one of David Cameron's best buddies, was quoted as saying, Cameron has played a blinder, which I thought was a very interesting comment. Is the BBC trying to convince us that watching these proceedings is a little bit like watching a sport? David Cameron is quite literally like an athlete, an Olympic athlete, going over to Europe and representing our country in a very kind of sporty and competitive way. That seems to be what they're trying to insinuate. But I think there's a little bit more to this comment. David Cameron played a blinder. Now, what is a blinder? So, of course, Boris Johnson sees himself as a little bit of a Cockney scallywag. So I went to the Urban Dictionary, and it says blinder. Something so good it has the potential to cause spectators' eyesight to fail. They're trying to tell us the truth. Good old BBC. He's played a blinder. He's attempting to blind us to his real motivation. Now, Britain wasn't the only country to not join the accord. It was one of two. The other one being Hungary. Now, what Hungary have done is that they've fallen for the trick, the blinder. What David Cameron has done is he's taken a particularly strong country in the European Union, and he has decided to say no to something that's very brave to say no to. Of course, hopefully you're getting the idea that we didn't really say no to it. What we essentially did was pretend to say no, so that other countries that might be dissenting against the European Commission show themselves. And unfortunately, that's exactly what Hungary have done. They have fallen for David Cameron's blinder. So keep your eye on Hungary. They'll either cave in very, very soon and actually join the accord and everything will be okay, or they might just stick to their guns, try to be tough against the European Commission, and just watch their leader change overnight. And it may just change like we've seen a change in Greece and Italy for somebody who maybe once was a high-up executive in an international bank, or possibly is labelled as a technocrat who's going to be safely guiding the country to a new and prosperous world order.
The transatlantic partnership was never just the foundation of our security. It was the foundation of our way of life. It was forged in experience of the most bitter and anguished kind. Out of it came a new Europe, a new world order, a new consensus as to how life should and could be lived.
So that was Tony Blair, and that was actually a little excerpt from a really, really good documentary called Invisible Empire. And if you haven't seen that, it's you can find it on YouTube in its entirety, and very, very much worth a look. So I found a very interesting document the other day as I was perusing the internet. It was originally published in a journal called Finance and Political History, and it was published on the 26th of February 2011. So it reads, to the majority of people, the words crown and city in reference to London refer to the Queen or to the capital of England. This is not the truth. The city is in fact a privately owned corporation or sovereign state occupying an irregular rectangle of 677 acres and located right in the heart of the 610 square mile Greater London area. The population of the city is listed at just over 4,000, whereas the population of Greater London is approximately 7.5 million. The Crown is a committee of 12 to 14 men who rule the independent sovereign state known as London or the City. The City is not part of England. It is not subject to the sovereign. It is not under the rule of the British Parliament. A little bit like the Vatican in Rome. It is a separate, independent state. The city, which is often called the wealthiest square mile on Earth, is ruled over by a Lord Mayor. Here are grouped together Britain's great financial and commercial institutions, wealthy banks dominated by privately owned Bank of England, Lloyd's of London, the London Stock Exchange, and the office of most of the leading international trading concerns. Here also is located Fleet Street, the heart and core of the newspaper and publishing worlds. The Lord Mayor, who is elected for a one-year stint, is the monarch in the city. As Aubrey Menon says in London, Time Life 1976, the relation of this monarch of the city to the monarch of the realm, that's the Queen, is curious and tells much. When the Queen of England goes to visit the city, she is met by the Lord Mayor at Temple Bar, the symbolic gate of the city. She bows and asks for permission to enter his private sovereign state. During such state visits, the Lord Mayor, in his robes and chain, and his entourage in medieval costume, outshines the royal party, which can dress up no further than service uniforms. The Lord Mayor leads the Queen into his city. The symbolism is clear. The Lord Mayor is the monarch, the Queen is his subject. The small clique who rule the city dictate to the British Parliament. It tells them what to do and when. In theory, Britain is ruled by a Prime Minister and a cabinet of close advisers. These fronts go to great lengths to create the impression that they are running the show, but in reality they are mere puppets whose strings are pulled by the shadowy characters who dominate behind the scenes. And just at the end of the article there's a quote from former Prime Minister of England during the late 1800s, Benjamin Disraeli, who apparently said, "So you see, the world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes." So I think what this clearly illustrates is that there's something behind the scenes, and not only does it say there's something behind the scenes, it's saying that there's a scene, very much like in a theatre. There's a facade, a nice picture in which a play is demonstrated to the spectators, and of course acting is the Parliament, the Act of Parliament. And of course David Cameron at the moment is playing a blinder for the world stage at the European conference. And of course lots of people are watching. In the news they're saying Washington is watching, and they're saying that China is watching. But I think we know who is really watching. It's those people behind the scenes. And quite interestingly, if you watch the news about the European Summit, have a look for the symbol that's on the sort of main door. If you see any of those pictures of the members of Parliament from various European countries entering, there's lots of press there and all that kind of stuff. They're going through a door that has a European symbol on it, and the European symbol is sandwiched between two sort of curves, the one at the top and one at the bottom, which form an eye. And the sort of the stars of the European symbol is sort of the the iris. Have a look. I'm trying to sort of find a picture of it. I'm going to have to sort of run the sort of TV through the computer and capture it, and then hopefully I can, at this point, I'll be displaying an image of it. Very, very interesting. So, thanks for listening to this broadcast. I'm going to wrap it up here, but do check back. I'm going to be doing further broadcasts in the next few days, and let's see how long I can continue analysing the what's going on. So I have been Samuel William, your host. This has been Truth You Can Wake Up To, and I'll speak to you next time.